For more on this story, let's cross to Brussels with Dave Keating. Dave, tell us more about the content of this deal.
Well, the most important thing in this deal is the symbolic consensus on solidarity. They were able to reach a compromise between southern coastline states like Italy, interior states like Germany, and Eastern European states like Hungary, all three of which had very different interests coming in to this summit. We got a statement of unity, and importantly for Italy, we got a recognition that migrants arriving on Italian shores are arriving not in Italy, but in Europe. Now, that's significant for Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte because it means that everyone bears the responsibility for those migrants. Italy has complained that its EU partners have been leaving it alone to deal with the migrant influx and not demonstrating solidarity, not helping Italy out. Secondly, there is a very important provision in these agreed statements today that the EU will set up so-called controlled centers on EU soil. Now, this is based on a French and Spanish proposal. It essentially means there will be secured refugee camps on EU soil, mostly in Spain, Italy, and Greece, but financed and managed by the European Union. Now, Italy was hesitant about this proposal because it worried that that financing and management wouldn't actually come, and Italy would end up having to run these camps itself. But in the end, Conte agreed, and he decided to trust his fellow EU leaders that that management really will come. At the same time, we got language on so-called secondary movement. That's when migrants who, say, arrive in Italy move on to another EU country like Germany or like France. Now, in Germany, this has become an intensely controversial political issue in recent weeks, with the country's hardline interior minister, Horst Seehofer, even threatening to bring down the coalition government if he's not allowed to take drastic action, such as closing Germany's internal EU borders. So Merkel had to get strong language on that today. What we got in the statements is a recognition that secondary movements are a problem and that countries can engage in bilateral cooperation in order to try to get a handle on the situation.
Dave, what are the outstanding issues, though, that still need to be hammered out?
Yeah, the most obvious thing that's not in this agreement is, as you mentioned, an overall reform of the EU's asylum policy, the so-called Dublin regulation. We knew ahead of time that such an agreement was not going to be possible at this summit because EU leaders remain very far apart on those big issues. Again, those three blocs, the southern, interior, and eastern blocs, are really opposed. But also we have this issue of processing centers outside Europe. In order for Italy to sign on to the idea of having these controlled centers, it had to get a promise from the other EU leaders that they're not giving up an idea to establish processing centers outside of the EU, Sahara centers in North Africa. They wanted to make sure that that was agreed in principle. So EU leaders gave their endorsement to the idea, but what those processing centers would actually look like, that still needs to be determined. All they can tell us right now are they are not camps, but we don't know what they will be. And of course, the relocation issue, the issue of spreading migrants out across Europe, we still have no consensus on that.
Dave, last question. Who are the winners and losers in this deal?
In the short term, everybody left here claiming to be a winner. Merkel was saying this is great that she got the language on the secondary movement. Conte is saying it's great that we have language on solidarity. And the Visegrad Four, the Eastern European countries, Hungary, Czech Republic, Poland, and Slovakia, were able to walk out saying we are not going to be made to take any migrants. We were really insistent on that. In the long term, it's going to depend how events unfold. It will depend on whether or not these controlled centers in Italy do actually end up being managed by Italy. It will depend on whether Angela Merkel is able to find agreements, bilateral agreements with other countries, and it will depend whether the V4 is able to keep out of those commitments to take in migrants. So in the short term, everybody's a winner. In the long term, we'll see.
Dave Keating, thank you so much reporting live there from Brussels on that migrant deal reached by the